Welcome to Pursuit Podcast. I'm Zach.
And I'm David. So Zach, today we have a very special guest, don't we? A very esteemed legendary chef, well known for his deep-rooted understanding of the Indonesian traditional cuisine and its cultural heritage.
Yeah, often referred to as the ambassador of Indonesian cuisine. This man has revolutionized and publicized Indonesian food to a global scale.
Right.
We proudly present to you and welcome you, Pak William Wongso.
So, Pak William, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, my name is William Wongso. I've been half of my life in as a profession in food and beverage. I've been taking a lot of the different aspects in culinary, started from the bakery, restaurant, and then now for the last more than 20 over years, I start to dedicate myself to introduce Indonesian food culture internationally, and also try to preserve this heritage.
Okay, Pak, being a man of your caliber in the food and beverage industry or the culinary industry in general, one can't help but wonder what sparked your passion? What started your passion for cooking in general, Pak?
It's coincident. But first of all, I love food. I like to taste. This is very important because you can, as I always say, especially now, because the era of social media, you can Google everything, but you can't Google taste. So the taste aspect involves a lot of respect. It's not just what you like and what you don't like. Right. Because you have to pay respect to all different taste culture in the world.
It's interesting that you mentioned taste cultures in the world, but I think it's well established that you have a very deep, driven passion for Indonesian cuisine. I wanted to ask why. Why specifically Indonesian cuisine?
I'm Indonesian.
Right.
I'm sad to say if the younger generation, what they are cooking, their passion is cooking, are mostly not non-Indonesian.
Right, yeah.
But I can't blame them because Indonesia, we don't have a formal education on Indonesian of its food culture. Right. But it's not easy. Indonesia is very diverse. 17,000 islands, 34 provinces, plus the village, everything. Everywhere are different. There are a lot of differences among this food culture, among Indonesian. I don't think any Indonesian ever tasted everything what we have in the whole Nusantara.
I think I can add on to that. I think a lot of the new restaurants we see nowadays, maybe restaurants that are started by non-Indonesian food, exactly. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think, what are the steps that Indonesia should take so that we can promote Indonesian food more?
Not just promote as well, to preserve it, right. to express it.
Well, I've been talking this for the last maybe 20, 30 years to the government. But until today, I don't think in Indonesia there is a concern about how to preserve, what is the best way to preserve our food culture. First, I say, we don't have a proper education on this unique and diverse food culture.
Right.
Compared to Korea, for instance. They have education, they have academy. Japan the same. And Japan, Spain go worldwide. They even have non-Japanese cooking competition internationally for non-Japanese chef.
Right.
It's in the back is again about the marketing of their product. The same in Thailand. How many restaurants Thai has already in the world? It's maybe more than 25,000. And they export all the ingredients worldwide. Right. The same as Vietnam. The boat people brought their food culture everywhere they land. When they land, they create their own compound. With most of the Vietnamese living there, it's like a Vietnamese village or Vietnamese city, like you can see in America.
Right. Do you think it's possible? Like we've mentioned before that Indonesia is so diverse in terms of cuisine. Do you think it's possible for us to be able to reach the way the Japanese did it?
No.
Is it due to the fact that
No.
we're so diverse?
No. We have to focus on a few
Cuisines specifically.
few area,
Few areas.
which is the popular one.
Right.
We have two versions. We have to introduce among Indonesian. Yes, there's no problem because when they travel, if you see when they going to other cities, they always put in a Google or Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp among the group that I'm going to Cirebon. What should I eat? Immediately get a lot of response. What the popular. That aspect, yes. And people start to travel for food, yes, in Indonesia. But there's not practitioner in the younger generation. If you see most of the middle class up who can afford to pay their children going abroad to go to the among the world best culinary school, they're not trained as Indonesian chef. They're not Indonesian cook. So we still have a lot of homework. So it's very difficult first to find, if you look at the CV of Indonesian cook or chef or senior chef, the CV it's hardly to find very specific that they are specialized in, for instance, regional food, like specialized in Padang, specialized in Aceh, specialized in Batak. Very difficult. But you find commonly non-Indonesian cooking, there's a lot. A good Japanese cook, a good Korean cook. They've been working 2 or 3 years or 5 years in a Japanese restaurant. Of course, they become a Japanese cook. Or the Chinese. And remember, the thing changed in the world now. The invasion of the Asia food culture is now, I think, the Western food culture is facing this problem. Everywhere, in Paris, in Sydney. If you go to Sydney, try to find Australian food. There's no more. It's easy to find Thai. So many Thai restaurants. They said more than 1,000 in Sydney, Thai restaurant. Everybody enjoy because of diversity of the palate. I have a restaurant in Sydney, jual nasi bungkus. It's not for Indonesian alone. Even the bule, they all love it, the idea. The complexity of dish is served in one plate. That's amazing.
Right.
Once they discover, because the Western, they serve the fine food is one by one, you enjoy a piece by piece. Right. The way Indonesian, the Asian, or the Middle East eating is everything together. It's with the family, with friend, and sharing.
Yeah. And I think that's what sets Indonesian cuisine apart from other cuisines. Indonesian cuisine brings people together in ways that other cuisines can't. Like, as you mentioned, the complexity of the different like flavor profiles or pairings that like nasi bungkus or nasi padang, it's just so much more different than like Western cuisines. Right. But adding,
so, for instance, where did you study?
Currently in high school, I go to SPH as well as David.
SPH?
Yeah, in school.
Okay, once you go to, I don't know, where was the next school you're going to go in abroad?
Preferably the US part.
Yeah, you go to US, you try to find where is the Indonesian restaurant.
Yeah.
It depends where you go.
I feel like
But the other Asian restaurant is so easy.
Yeah. So would you promote the establishment of cooking schools in Indonesia that sort of places emphasis on Indonesian cuisine?
Yeah, to set up Indonesian culinary school is not just the idea. It's a venture. It's a capital. Someone or company want to have the spirit to help this nation to sustain its food culture. That's possible. And then it takes time also because it's not easy to find a cook. We have to bring in a lot of specialty from each region to come to one place, for example, in Jakarta, to teach, to introduce their different food culture. Have you tasted food of Aceh?
Not.
You?
can't now.
You still, but you taste food in Paris, you taste food in Japan, you taste food in Korea, right?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like you said, there needs to be a institution that's dedicated to promote.
It should be run professionally
Right.
and with a good financial backup.
I think the government has been doing that with Wonderful Indonesia, but is it lacking?
No, the wonderful Indonesia is mainly to promote tourism.
So not really mainly Indonesian cuisine here.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, they will invite the foreigner to come Indonesia to see the view, to see the rest, and a lot of places. How can you eat?
But not the food, right?
Yeah,
and it's
because when you serve the local food, there's a lot of the most important is the food safety,
Right. Yeah.
right?
And-
It's not what you want to do, but what the environment are.
I think also logistics wise, it's a bit of a challenge to truly express our cuisine, right? Because we're just so diverse. We cannot.
No, we cannot.
Yeah.
We cannot introduce everything.
Yes, agreed.
We should introduce, like in Thailand, introduce the popular. If you go to all Thai restaurant everywhere, the menu almost the same. If you want more, you want to know more and taste more about Thai food culture, come to Thailand. And in Thailand, you can eat. You can eat on the street. You can eat on the market. You can eat good Thai restaurant in a 5-star hotel. Try to find a good Indonesian restaurant in the 5-star hotel in Jakarta.
William, I wanted to ask: is there like if you were asked to pick specific dishes to showcase to the world, what would they be?
And
I've been doing what they call it gastronomic diplomacy
Right.
for the last more than 20 years. We only introducing to the world that we exist. But a lot of question was asked. Where is Indonesian restaurant? If they like the food, they will ask.
Right.
If I do it in Turkey, for instance, where's Indonesian restaurant? The only thing that I cannot answer is to give them the recommendation where to eat about Indonesian restaurant. It's very, very rare.
See.
the issue is we're not expanding enough, you would say.
No, look, be realistic. I always say Indonesia is very peaceful country. We never have a big disaster. Okay, once happened in Aceh, but not nationwide.
Right.
We never have a war. We never have a civil war. And we don't have a refugee. All Indonesian migrant abroad is not refugee. They're just migrant to other country individually. Have you seen any perkampungan Indonesia abroad?
No.
No. But you see a lot of Vietnamese village, Thai and
Right.
Japan and Chinatown. You go to Sydney, you go to Cabramatta, it's Vietnamese.
I think some Indonesians have moved to like Western countries such as Amsterdam, maybe even the US.
No, Amsterdam in Holland has been long time. It was a history.
Right. So I wanted to ask, because I've been to some of these restaurants abroad. They serve Indonesian food. However, since they're living there, of course, they have to adjust the palate to their customer, their clientele, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What do you think
It's
about
wrong.
this sort of fusion cuisine?
No, that's wrong. Not these days. Everyone now want to taste authentic food. You see, if you travel everywhere now, you Google locally, local, wherever you go, you just Google local food tour. There will be pop up a lot of services to take you around to walk or cycling or by car to eat around locally, guided by the local food expert. Before, we only do city tour. Like 30 years ago, it's only city tour. And each tour, just to see the view, the food is not that important. But now, everybody want to interest to taste the local because they see a lot of feature on the Instagram, on social media.
So you don't condone cultural fusion?
Not me. Not me. I want to look, be realistic. We haven't been able to introduce our food culture and the new generation because they don't know about this food culture and then they pretend to know and do the fusion or recreate.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so sort of steering to a different conversation, right? More towards your career itself. What were some challenges? Okay, so what were some challenges that you've encountered along the way becoming a chef?
No, I'm not doing restaurant anymore. I just be a culinary consultant. And the most challenge if I encounter to open restaurant in different country, the challenge is the expertise. So, like in Singapore, if you want to open Indonesian restaurant, it's very high cost. And then second, if you want to bring in Indonesian chef, you have to hire 9 Singaporean. So it'll never happen.
I guess to follow up to that, I think we've established that you understand so much about Indonesian food and cuisine. We wanted to ask, how did you learn all of this information, all of this knowledge? Were there specific mentors, perhaps experiences?
I visit almost randomly all over the country.
Right.
I taste very local food, talking to the regional cook, home cook, to see how authentic their food culture is. So in that aspect, that you know what they're using, what they cook, is not recipe. It's the spirit behind it. And whether some of the food can be transferred to other places, but some of the food has to remain locally with this with the indigenous spirit. So you have to be selective. That's why I keep promoting rendang.
Yeah.
When I do with Gordon Ramsay also, I taught him how to cook, to know rendang in the original place. But if you talk about rendang alone, it's only one type. Every village, they have their own style. There are 900 villages in West Sumatra. Not to let alone the grandmother rendang,
Yeah.
right?
I think you mentioned in one of your videos, I think it was the Unilever corporate head or something.
Yes.
You were teaching him rendang. You taught him the 3-hour version instead of 9-hour version.
No, it depends. It depends on the type of beef,
Right.
because like in West Sumatra, the beef might not have a birth certificate.
Right.
And in the Western world, you only have 2 hands. So I create a system to cook rendang in a modern way.
I see.
But to retain its authenticity in taste. The most important, to bring the spices from Indonesia and the coconut cream from Indonesia. I just launched William Wongso rendang in California last January to introduce a good rendang but manufactured in a modern way.
I see. So, Pak, correct me if I'm wrong, Pak, but your father pursued a profession in photography, right? How has that influenced you, or how did he perceive you and your passion in cooking?
No, my father is before he was very active in he was Sukarno first private photographer, and then his passion was film, but he loved cooking. But he is very liberal to let us, since we were young, to taste everything. So a lot of family would just follow what the kids like and feed them. They don't give them, so they don't have a very diverse palate. These days, the younger generation must have a diverse palate because you're traveling. You can't bring rendang all over the world. You have to eat locally. You have to pay respect for the local food culture.
I think in an Asian household, being a chef, even right now, but more in the past, is sort of discouraged because there's a stigma in Asian culture that parents want their children to be lawyers, doctors, and engineers, and et cetera, right? What do you have to say to perhaps children who are aspiring to be chefs, culinary experts like you, but their parents are discouraging them?
No, look, I'm not academic. I did not go to school. But I always believe you have a different academic background. At the end, you want to go food. It's the best way because you have a very broad knowledge. Instead of you been cooking 30 years in the kitchen, you know nothing. You're only reading everything from Google.
Right.
It's different. I found a lot. In America, there's a lot of a fund manager. Life is very good financially, life and hectic and stressful. Maybe at the age of 40, 45, they went to cooking school. They learned cooking.
Right.
Why? Because they exposed already. They've been exposed to the best wine, to the best food, and meeting people. And one day, so I want to retire from my fun work. Then I go to food.
Right. So I guess
Right.
Is that
So I would rather to have someone to study something else than later become a learning any going to the culinary academy, for instance, instead of going to cooking school and you think you become a chef. There is no such a thing. I've been asked by many family where they can send the kids to a chef school. There's no such a thing. There's no chef school. You know CIA, right? Culinary Institute, the good CIA, Culinary Institute of America. Yep. You know the tagline? The first study is the first day you leave the campus.
right?
The campus just give you a lot of guidelines, a lot of hands-on things, but next, it depends.
Right.
Like the student from hospitality school, for instance, they have interest in food, in cooking. At the end, they went to start to enter apprenticeship in a restaurant. and they love it. They keep doing it. Slowly, because of talent and everything, they become from a dishwasher and growing, slowly going up to that specific restaurant. At the end, they become a good cook of that specific food, but not Indonesia. Because Indonesia is not many restaurants you can enter. Indonesia, with 270 million people, I would say 99% they're eating Indonesian food.
Right. I see.
The market is huge, but very segregated when you come to the character and profile.
Yeah. So, Pa, being a well-renowned chef, being the representation of our culture and our cuisine in regards to Indonesian food, you've got to work with significant individuals, government officials, and you were actually broadcasted with Gordon Ramsay in his Uncharted documentary, right? You got to express the beauty of our cuisine, or the specific cuisine in Surabaya at the time. What's a memorable experience that you've that stood out to you over your course as a chef?
Look, I think because I'm persistent of doing Indonesian food culture, introducing food culture, then I have the opportunity, a lot of opportunity to travel, to meet people, to meet the great people, to introduce Indonesian cooking in the most prestige places, like the Metropolitan Club in Washington, D.C., and serving a lot of dignitaries during the last 25 years. The last one is a G20. Then in those aspects, it's like you are playing golf. There's never ending experience. Every time there's a new experience, a new to learn. But by experience for so many years, then mostly now when I always have a tagline wherever I go. The same like on the 3rd of October, I'm doing collab cooking in Manila at the Manila House. It's a very elite private club. What is the theme? So I throw the concept, similarity of the differences. There's a lot of similar thing in Philippines, but they are different than Indonesia. So they came up with the tagline, Lasa and Rasa. Lasa is a rasa of Philippines. When I do event in like the President Jokowi in Korea, embracing Korean culture, food culture, with Indonesian diversity. So I bring Indonesian spices, cook Indonesian way, but using the best ingredients of Korea. Things like that. And learning the dietary restriction of many presidents is always something new all the time.
Pak William, I think you've placed a lot of emphasis on showcasing rendang to the world. I think part of the reason why is because it encapsulates the nature of our cuisine. Very spice heavy, very complicated, very complex. I guess we wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on being called the diplomat rendang?
No, I'm not diplomat rendang. No, that's not the right word. I'm not officially rendang because I've been introducing rendang. Look, when you want to introduce something to the world, you have to find something that known first, something that known in the country, within the people. What is the most known food along this archipelago or Nusantara? Is Western Sumatra food or makanan Padang. And among the Padang, what I found unique is rendang.
Right.
Because rendang, very complex, very difficult to process because it's a time. Also the ingredients. Gordon Ramsay saw all the ingredients, he was shaking his head. Impossible. Right. For a Western chef to learn Indonesian is a hardship. It doesn't matter who he is. Right. It's not familiar first. So when I did the presentation in 2009 at the World Food Forum in Napa, organized by Culinary Institute at the St. Helena campus, I also presenting rendang. There were about 60 chefs around the world to present their individual street food. And all of them, among me, got only 15 minutes to present on the main podium, all attended by professional, food writer, food critic, chef. How to introduce rendang in 15 minutes. So I created a tagline from white to black, from white santan to caramelized
right,
to black, and combining, showing into quick process within 15 minutes using PowerPoint, the slide, the process, and then after that in the afternoon do a real tasting in the marketplace so everybody can taste. Everybody was amazed with the taste profile of rendang.
Right.
Yeah. So, Pa, is there something that you want to further pursue, or is there something on your, like you could say, culinary bucket list that you want to
I still
achieve
want.
that you have?
I dream that one day Jakarta has Indonesian Culinary Center who give all kind of information about our food culture, because a lot of internationally they contacted me. They asked, where should I see when for instance, I have to go to Aceh, when I have to go to Kalimantan. I want to learn, want to know of their food culture. I cannot be the only one. There must be an institution who take care of this and develop the possibility that the locals start to aware, because don't underestimate their own food culture.
So, like, I guess a solution to Indonesia's dying food culture, you would say, that's being very diluted with foreign cultures, is
establishing
a central institution.
Yes, to introduce everything, ingredients, some the indigenous ingredients.
Right.
You cannot eat the real river fish in Jakarta, right?
Right.
And when I'm going to Sumatra or to Kalimantan, my aim is looking for where to eat the river fish.
Yeah.
But like, okay, I guess another question that I would like to ask is, I think we tapped into this earlier back in the beginning of the podcast, but we wanted to ask, like, where do you see Indonesian food in the next 50 years? Do you think it will prevail, or do you think it would have diluted away?
I'm afraid. I'm not. Well, I try to not too pessimistic.
Right.
If there we have to create an ecosystem. We cannot compete with Thailand, Vietnam, China, Japan, and Korea or India. We should not compete, but we have to overlook that What is the main problem? If the younger generation cannot taste Indonesian anymore, can you imagine your children, you the next parents don't know Indonesian food? Of course, you will never serve Indonesian food to your children.
Yeah.
Right.
Second, it's difficult to find a home cook, who cook well Indonesian food. And like me, for instance, I grew up in Surabaya. I grew up with the local food. Then I moved to Jakarta. My children, if I don't introduce them with the food of Surabaya, they will never know. They will, especially my grandchildren, they will, if we give them rawon, for instance, they push it away. What is something dirty and black? They're not used to it. So it's a lot of country, even from younger generation, they keep introducing very local food.
Right.
So you really want to preserve our culture, and one way to do that is
I just tell to every young mother, let your children start to taste Indonesian food.
Right.
Because believe me, the Asian food, Middle East food will surpassing Western food.
I guess it's safe to say that the current trajectory, Indonesian cuisine will die down. Yeah. But from a global perspective, when we think about different cuisines in Asia, for example, we think Japan. What do we immediately think of? We think of sushi.
Yeah,
right?
sushi. Yeah.
What do you think can be that dish for Indonesia? When we think of Indonesia, we immediately think something, a certain dish.
What is it?
Yeah. What's a dish that sort of encapsulates? I mean, it's hard because we're so diverse.
Right.
Yeah.
We're so
Yeah.
the variety blows things out of proportion in a sense where we cannot have one dish that encapsulates Indonesian cuisine. But if there could be one dish that you could introduce to the world,
Rendang.
Rendang. Right.
Because everybody know rendang. Everybody like rendang. But rendang is difficult to make. Very time consuming. There's so many, now you can Google a lot of rendang being produced individually as a home production.
Right. So I guess like economically speaking, that could be like an export for us, rendang.
Yes.
Branching out to different parts of the world.
And some local, because remember, in the future, we have to force in less and less who want to encounter with the complexity and difficulty of cooking Indonesian food.
Right.
Then there might be the industry to produce semi-ready
Right.
food of Indonesia.
Semi-ready.
Or frozen or that, so people can just bring home and heat it up.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that like what you're doing with your rendang? Like
I do here.
Right.
I do here. I do also the one in America.
Right.
Yes.
I see.
you know, in this day and age, people view sort of packaged foods as processed or not a valid solution to express culture, right? Like, what are your thoughts? Because I can see that you're trying to introduce the beauty of our cuisine, and the one way of doing that efficiently is
processed food. Is to process food that you don't know what is inside, even they mention, and they make it inexpensive. Ready to cook food has to be in good quality and chunky. A lot of you have to, whenever you eat something grounded, then you have to question who is making it. The same like you eat bakso. Do you know what is inside? Then you have to know the brand. There's a reputation.
Yeah.
Right? You eat sausage, they are expensive sausage, they are cheap, inexpensive sausage. So that's what mentioned, because the processed food is is a food technology to make the food taste good and inexpensive and so-called affordable. So they have a lot of additive. That's for sure.
Do you think like it's possible in the future where rendang becomes so popular, becomes a staple of Indonesian food that later on there will be like high quality rendang with like better quality meats?
Do you think Indonesian cuisine will reach a certain point where people around the world can, like, let's say in Japan, people around Japanese people can say, I'm craving rendang.
Right.
I'm craving Indonesian food.
That's possible, but only certain region. But it depends on how we do it. We have to do it. We have to plan properly from now. In fact, we haven't done much about this, but because the nature is different, we cannot, as I said, we cannot compare with Vietnam.
Right.
The both people brought their food culture wherever they land for their own people. And through the social contact, and the local become taste, wow, it's good because introduced by true friend. The Vietnamese have a local American friend who brought them home to eat the food, and they eventually love it. But in the same time, in Vietnam, the setting of the food and beverage, local, are very good. Clean, quality, the different type of quality and people can select.
Right.
You can on the motorbike you can do a food tour in Vietnam.
Right. I guess we've established that Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Thailand are very good at publicizing.
They're so high up there.
So what would you say could be a first step that we can do to get
I
get
say
to their
always
level?
Education in a lot of aspect.
Right.
To educate who? To educate housemaid to cook at home. To have a young woman start to understand what is basic Indonesian cooking.
Right.
And for the student to go to vocational Indonesian cooking school. Also, even they go through those states, it's still not guarantee. Otherwise, the worst is we don't know anything.
Right. But what do you think these Asian countries that have done like so well at publicizing their food, like what's a similar characteristic that you think that we can see in all of them that makes them so good at like globalizing their food, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And preserving their culture.
What is it?
What is a common characteristic?
What is it that they do?
Yeah.
What's a similar commonality that they do to make them to help them globalize? Like, because Japan, China, their cuisines are very established, right? What are some, like, what is it that they do to make it as big as it is now?
I initiate a program called Indonesian Spice Up the World because the constraint of the cooks who professionally good in Indonesian cooking on recipe base. So the Western thinking, everything recipe base, not Indonesia now. If we still approaching recipe base now for the industry, it will not work because all the students never go through that stage to process individual rendang from scratch, to make curry from scratch, everything. So I'm introducing start from ready-made paste. Of course, in the market, there's so many ready-made paste dedicated to individual cooking, individual type of food. Then there will be differentiate on the quality of it that everybody has to pre-select to make easier. If we still thinking about learning Indonesian cooking, we'll never take off because there's no facility. Unless if you have budget, you travel all over Indonesia, learn individual in the kampung.
You placed emphasis on the term recipe based. Could you elaborate so the audience knows what do you mean?
Everything cooking, you look at the recipe, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, the home cook will look at the recipe. For the galangal, so many gram, the garlic, the shallot, that's a recipe. But what happens if you bring that recipe to Australia, to bring that recipe to Japan? Can you get the same ingredients?
No.
Right? And if you apply to the industry, how many Indonesian young cook will go through that, would have a patience and passion to go through all the process?
Not a lot.
See?
Yeah.
To cook the Indonesian is this, the basic of Indonesian cooking is a spice base. It's not the dry spices. So there's a lot of confusion between rempah and bumbu. Spices is rempah, which is clove, cinnamon, star anise, nutmeg. This is country spices. But Indonesian cooking base is spice base. It's a fresh spices ingredient like cabe, shallot, garlic, galangal, ginger, blended in the paste and cooked with the oil. So this is a totally different approach, and everybody has to understand.
Yeah. You've obviously made such a big impact and a dent in in regards to cultural expression through cuisine, right? But what legacy do you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered for?
No, you see, I'm 77. I just try to give the example to younger generation. Just be aware you're Indonesian, and if you go abroad and people ask you what language you're speaking, you say English. Where you from? Indonesia. This is the problem with Indonesian new generation. They can speak English better than Bahasa Indonesia. They like Western food better than non-Indonesian food than Indonesian food. So how do we deal with this? It's not my legacy alone. I can just give them the guide, the example. I can talk to them, but the reality has to be conducted by individual. The government, I don't know. Your English is very good. Your English is very good, but you study in Indonesia.
Right.
I went to Jogja. The kids speak very good English without Javanese accent. Why? Because they can't speak Javanese.
Right.
In these days, the family is so proud that their grandchildren speak very fluent English. For me, it's very sad.
So I guess there's not enough self-love as a nation, right? As a culture.
We grew up in Surabaya.
Yeah.
If I meet friends from Surabaya, I speak the local language with them.
Yeah.
Can they speak now? They don't.
They all speak English, is it?
Yeah.
I think it's a very complex obstacle.
Yeah.
That as a country.
My grandson speak Indonesian like foreigner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a global issue. It's a problem that's so embedded into our system that we need to change.
Exactly.
Because if you want to be successful in this day and age, we have to speak English, right? Undoubtedly.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now you have to speak Chinese.
But it's also important.
But
to
your
preserve.
own language.
Yeah.
You see, when the Olympics, these kids, the gold medalists, when they came to China, they interviewed them. You speak Cantonese? You're from Canton. Of course, they immediately speak Cantonese.
Right.
You're from Sichuan. They immediately speak Sichuanese.
Right.
But they speak also Mandarin.
I guess that's what that's what we should strive as to be as a nation, right?
Not just cultural preservation in a culinary sense, but also
Yes.
generally.
As a whole.
It's overall.
Yeah. I think by solving one, it will solve the other as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, as our podcast comes to an end, we really appreciate you taking the time
My
out
pleasure.
of your,
It's-
out of your busy schedule. I mean, we're like teenagers and we're learning from an Indonesian legend, right?
a privilege.
Culinary legend. It's
Yeah.
a privilege
It's
and
a
it's a
huge
really good
privilege.
opportunity,
Right.
especially
My
as
pleasure.
our third podcast. Thank you for helping us kickstart this journey with us.
You've learned so much even
yeah.
in this podcast alone,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Encouraging.
We really thank you for giving us this opportunity to learn more about you and to help educate the youth.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.